And we're live. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Avisa from Uncle Bobbie's, and today we have a really exciting event for you all. Thank you all for tuning in. We are celebrating this amazing children's book, Born Ready, the true story of a boy named Penelope. We have author Jody Patterson here to tell us all about how this book came to be. You know how we do. We're going to get into the discussion between the author and the moderator, and then afterward we're going to have audience Q&A. So please feel free to submit your questions over the course of the conversation. You can use the Ask a Question module at the bottom of the screen and vote for which questions you'd like to be answered first. If you haven't already gotten your copy of the book, Born Ready, you can click the green button below the screen to buy it on Uncle Bobbie's online bookshop, or you can buy a copy if you happen to find yourself in Germantown, Philadelphia. So come on in. We'd love to see you. And with that, let's get into it. Our moderator today is an Uncle Bobbie's family favorite who happens to bring over a decade of higher education experience, serving at both private and public institutions at historically Black colleges and universities, HBCUs, and historically white institutions, HWIs, urban, secular, and religious affiliated. She received her Bachelor of Science degree in Business Marketing from Grambling State University and Master's of Education degree in Student Affairs in Higher Education from Texas State University. She's currently working to propose her research in the Adult, Professional, and Community Education doctoral program at Texas State University. We are so happy to have her here with us today. Please welcome Miss Destiny McKinney. Where's she at? Let's get her out here. Hey, Destiny.
Hi.
Oh, a little bit of reverb. That's not a problem. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
All right. And now, our featured author, Jody Patterson. She's the author of The Bold World, a memoir of family and transformation, and was Family Circles magazine's most influential mom in 2018. She's the mother of 5 children, like Destiny herself, 2 of whom are self-proclaimed gender nonconformists, 1 transgender and another genderqueer. Jody was inspired to write Born Ready to show how an entire community can be flexible and change for those that they love. Please give it up for Jody Patterson.
Hi. Hi, Destiny.
Hey, lady.
Okay, wait. There's too much energy on this.
I know we're about to
But
go.
I think it's just the 2 of us. We can do it without the reverb. Hi.
Hi, how you doing?
Oh my goodness.
Is that better?
A little bit. Yeah, let's turn our volumes down a bit. Maybe we just our frequency is jamming.
We're gonna work through. All right. So
Wait, I have a
whenever
suggestion.
I'm gonna mute. Whenever I talk, you mute.
Okay, hold on. Okay, try.
Is that better?
This is a weird platform for me, but where is your mute button? Just
When
so
you
I see
put your
I
cursor
see
on
it.
the screen, you'll see it right at the top. Just put it on your face. Are you muted now?
So if our host can maybe pull herself off, because we are having such hard reverb and microphone scrunching. I don't know what to do.
I'm going to try to pull myself off. In the event that I can't, what I will do is, it might be ambitious. I'm going to try to mute whoever isn't talking, and just do it that way.
Bounce back and forth.
Yeah, and I'll just be vigilant. So that you guys don't have to worry about it. I will try to do it. But let me first try to take myself off.
Okay.
Audience, please hang in there. We'll be with you
But the
shortly.
weirdest thing is, like, now the two of us are a little bit better, but it's just Dustin. I don't know what it is.
She's trying with the headphones. Let's see if
Okay.
that makes a difference.
I'll follow along.
Can y'all hear me? Is that better?
Yeah.
We good to go?
Thank you.
Jody, how about you?
I can hear everyone.
All righty.
What did we do? We did it.
I think we did it. I think we did it.
We hacked it.
All right.
Black women hacked the internet. Don't sweat it.
So, in this moment, in this time, on this day, how are you feeling?
As my uncle said, what is this day like but itself? My Uncle Raymond was a poet, and I have one of his poems, a few of his lines framed on my wall. What is this day like but itself? It is unique. It is one of many days that we will exist in, and we have to let that be.
Yes, you better come with it this morning. Well, this afternoon.
Hi.
All right. We're about to jump into Born Ready. I read this to my 5 children yesterday, ages 5, 9, 6, 4, and then a toddler. And I didn't realize that we haven't had the conversation yet, but they had the contact points. And so it wasn't anything new. It was like, oh, there's a name for that. Okay. And I was like, well, that was easy. And they were pretty much like moving on. But I want to start with a question from my 10-year-old. She wanted to know how you felt after you wrote the book, once it was finished.
Thank you, 10-year-old, for that question. Well, I mean, this book, and I've heard writers say this and musicians say this book was the culmination of many years. And it was also the follow-up to my first book, which was The Bold World. And I had spent both books are about pivotal moments in my life that sort of gave me my understanding around gender. And then helped me relearn gender in a new, more broad way. So The Bold World, I wrote because I wanted families to be able to talk about gender and gender flexibility and gender nonconformity and transgender reality. And my children's voice was necessary to tell this story. So this book is from a child's perspective. It doesn't have any of the heaviness that adults bring to this topic, right? It's not scary, it's not sad, it's not tragic. It's triumphant and it's joyful, and it puts my children in the center of the change. And in particular, it puts Pannell, my transgender son, at the center of the whole entire community's shift. So the book feels great. I mean, we're so happy to see it. My kids are happy. They feel really proud. Their voices are front and center. And I feel like almost like a lightness. When I wrote my memoir, I was really proud of myself, but there was a nervousness around some of the depth of what I had shared with the world. This book just feels like, oh, it just feels so good to have it out there. It's so light in terms of like the energy. It just kind of makes me feel up. So we feel really good. I feel really light and energized by this book.
If that ain't liberation, I don't know what is.
that is the true liberation.
Yes. We were struck by how just matter of fact. The kids fell in love with the superpowers. Y'all, I'm not giving it away. You got to purchase it. So they're going to be cliffhangers. Okay. but we fell in love with the superpowers. Most importantly, we fell in love with Penelope at the time. Having the courage and even his own way to voice how he was feeling. Can you speak to cultivating that environment without knowing that you needed that environment for that moment?
You said a lot. I'm going to try to touch on everything I heard in that statement. One, there is a nervousness around talking about gender, and particularly transgender, because a lot of us don't have the language. And so we will stumble and make mistakes. We'll say she, as you did, instead of he. And I did it for years. Sometimes I still do it with my own children. And I want to just put that out there, that there is no shame, and we have to let go of the fear of making these mistakes. I appreciate that you and I are having this conversation, and I can mention the fact that sometimes we say she when we mean he. And I had to tell my son that. I said, in my heart, I recognize you just as you are. I got to get this mouth and this brain working. So when we talk about how did I prepare, sometimes I stood in front of the mirror and practiced. Grace is a practice. Mental flexibility is a practice. So I would have to stand in front of the mirror and say, Penelope boy, and really rewire not only my mouth, but my brain to see this child as he is. I didn't know, and I'm not sure what you meant by I guess the question was, how did I prepare for these moments with him, or? You're on mute.
No, more so your home was already a courageous space for your baby to know that he could voice this concern to you. How did you do that, not knowing that this was on the horizon?
This is going to come up. Yeah. So I was raised by revolutionaries. I was raised by multiple generations of people who did not conform. So this gender nonconformity title is new to many people, but nonconformity is nothing new to Black folks. We've never wanted to conform. We've wanted to be true to ourselves. And so the way my family raised me, from my great grandmother, great grandmother Ma, great grandmother Lurleen, grandmother Gloria, they've always taught us to go against the status quo and to make the world better by pushing forward. My grandmother was a civil rights leader. She was dubbed Ms. Revolution for the work she did in the South. She fought against school boards and hospitals, and she won those court cases changing laws. So I knew from a very early age that I knew from a very early age to use my voice, to use my physical presence, to use my intellect, to use my femininity, anything, all of my things, to use them to move things forward. So in my house, as I was raising 5 children, I was doing the best I could to bring forth that Black feminist energy, like we shift the culture. And I was teaching that to my daughter and my sons and everyone. I was not understanding transgender reality. I didn't even know about that. But what I was teaching my kids was self-determination, Kujajakalia, unity, moja. All these things come from inside of us, and the best things come from inside. And so we have to make sure that we, from the inside out, are directing culture, not that the outside is telling us who to be or what to do. So it was just a natural way of my family to build up the individual. And I think many Black people, no matter where your socioeconomic status is, no matter what part of the world you live in, most Black people understand those principles of self-determination and unity. We might not articulate them in the words of Kwanzaa or in the way that I've said it, but I think it's like these are tenets that we understand. And so that was sort of the basis of my home. I raised my children in a very actively Black household. And my families, all the way down to my great grandparents, were actively Black in the culture and the way that we were raised. So
There you go. Just being as a resistance.
Absolutely. I think that I drew on Black resistance, particularly Black female resistance, as guiding principles to the way I was raising my kids current day. I just didn't realize at the time, Black resistance, the liberation of LGBTQAI people, trans acceptance, all of that is tied. I didn't quite place it in my mind. Of course, now I clearly connect the dots.
You said something big there, and you said it earlier too, that you hadn't even thought to think trans or LGBT to even bring that into the equation. So where's the jump off point? Where once Penelope, now Pannell.
Yes. Yeah, he changed his name to Pannell. Thank you.
Yes, Pannell. And so where do you start trying to figure out, how do you start? What do you do as mama who's supposed to know all things, but you don't know this?
Such a big thing I didn't know. So many people, millions of people I didn't see. Clearly the one that choked me up the most was my own son. I hadn't even seen my own son in his fullness. And then the day, and this is one of my favorite parts of the book. There's a moment when I know that something is deeply wrong. I know that we are not settled as a family. I know that Pannell is going through something very troubling. And as a mom, I'm trying to fix everything. Fix. I can, maybe if I cook better, maybe if I play more, maybe if I hug more, my child will be okay. But Pannell was not getting better. And there's a moment in the story and in the real life experience where I didn't try to fix, and I asked the question to Pannell, what's wrong? Baby, why are you so angry? And Pannell tells me, everyone thinks I'm a girl and I'm not. Mama, I am a boy. In that moment, I felt like I had failed to raise a proud girl, a proud feminist. And so I was at a loss for words. I tried to understand through my own lens. And I would say things like, well, baby, if you feel like your brothers, it's fine. You can act tough, just like your brothers. Because we think tomboy, we think maybe, lesbian, we think maybe, strong woman, strong female. And Pannell said, no, Mama, I don't feel like a boy. I am a boy. So that's when I understood that there was a difference between feeling and being. And I had to listen, not speak. I had to have him transfer his information to me. There's a lot of transferring of information from adult to child, but in those moments I needed him to give me some of his information, to share what he had with me. And I call that his ninja powers. Children have these powers that we don't recognize because we minimize them because of their age and their experience. Age and experience don't stand still. Those things change, and in a flash, they'll be 20, 50, 60. When do we say that they're old enough to know? So in that moment, I said, okay, Pannell, tell me everything you know. What do you know that I don't? Because I have to be with you on this journey. So it was a lot of listening, and it was a lot of researching, and it was a lot of finding new, and this is over the course of months and years, finding new communities that I could learn from, because at first I was really rooted in the Black community, which I still am. But when I realized my son was trans, I had to expand my base community to include the LGBT community. As a parent, it is almost impossible to think you don't know what to do. When something like this hits you, there's no mistaking it. You don't have necessarily something right out your pocket you can pull. There's no roadmap. For me, there wasn't a roadmap to raising a trans kid. And so most of the process in this was really understanding that who I am, I had to realize who I am, and then who he is. It's not that far apart. So I'm not raising a foreigner. I'm not raising someone who is not unhuman. We are human, and in his transness and in our Blackness, we have a human common denominator. And so after all the research and all the new language that I practiced, I really dug deep into the humanity of it, because You coming for my son, you're coming for me. We're not that far off. And I would tell, this is really funny. I would tell him, anybody who has a problem with you at school, you tell them to come see me. He would say, why? I said, because whatever you are, I am. And he would say, wait, you're trans too, mama? And I would say, neither here nor there. You just tell them whatever you are, I am. And so that kind of like, this, I don't see the separation as much of them and us. It's really a we thing for me. Long story.
That hit hard. But what hit harder was hearing you articulate the fact that the two communities were not mutually exclusive. This notion that you had to step outside of the comfort of the Black community to find the knowledge and the words and acceptance. How has that been, trying to marry the two on the other side?
Sweet, beautiful. It was a devastating thought that I would have to leave the Black community to save my kid, right? At one point, and I think almost many parents who are raising trans kids have this immediate urge that death is right around the corner. And in order to avoid death, you got to isolate yourself. You and your kid, it's just the two of you, and you have to protect your child from the entire world, including your Black people. That's the initial thought, and I'll tell you why. It's because of the societal imprint. Society has said trans people are scary, dangerous, crazy, psychopaths. So we are fighting the demons of our society. But what the beautiful thing is when I found that my community of Brooklyn, Bed-Stuy, Black, accepted us, protected us, as they do Miss Carol down the block, as they do Naima up the street, right? That was beautiful. When I realized that there was a private school in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, run by a Black female bishop from Jamaica, who, Miss Bishop, we call her, who said to her community, she's had a school in Crown Heights for 20 plus years, we accept Penelope because we accept all children. And if you don't, this school is not for you. She bubbled us. She said, all minds, every child's mind is relevant. Penelope is a prophet. We will learn from Penelope. We will protect Penelope. So finding out that people, and particularly Black people, men and women, have protected us, have accepted us, was reaffirming of the idea that within the Black community, we know, and I'm going to go back to this intrinsically, unity is the core. That is how the Black church survived. That is how HBCUs survived. That is how Black Wall Street survived. That is how our Black neighborhoods have thrived despite the odds. So it was really sweet. It was also confirming of what I already knew. Black folks, we with information, we do really well. We do really well. We are so good.
Resilient.
We are, and we're fast. Like they never, I never. It was more my fear. So I'll say this: there is a lot of violence from cis people onto trans people. A lot of violence from straight people onto queer people. So that reality that over 100 people have been murdered who are trans last year globally, that's a reality. They weren't murdered by trans people, they were murdered by people who are not trans. So there is a reality that there's violence against trans people. It is dangerous to be different. And I'm going to say this over and over again, I have found complete protection in my Black community.
That's so affirming, and it speaks to the counter. It actually counters the narrative out there that we're not inclusive, and we are stuck around this religiosity piece, and we, as a result of church, we can't. And so to hear that is really affirming, and we need more narratives out there so folks can understand that no, we are mutually exclusive, and education is step one.
Education. And I want to just say that there's evolution that happens, right? Naturally. Each generation evolves. We are not the same as our children in all of our thought processes, nor should we be. So there are some folks that are not going to move with this or understand this or use the right language. It's just, it's a fact. My children have a grandfather from Ghana. Their father's from Ghana, their grandfather's from Ghana. And Grandpa G, it was very, when he was alive, he was very traditional in his African Ghanaian roots. Traveled the world, eye surgeon, very knowledgeable, and chose to hold on to his Ghanaian culture and language and biases. And so we weren't sure if he was going to accept Penelope as boy. And we decided not to really hit it over the head about gender, but we asked him to enter this relationship with his grandchild around language. And so he said, please, Grandpa G, can you just use the right pronoun? Sorry, please, Grandpa G, can you just say he instead of she? We put no judgment on it. Just can you use he instead of she with Penelope? And he said, sure. Because in my language of Twi, gender pronouns don't exist. We just have pronouns. So we never talked about gender or being trans. We just used language as the back door. And that proximity that grandpa had with his grandchild allowed for the broader family to come in. So it's like when you talk about proximity and you talk about knowledge, I think one person can set a tone for a family or a community, and more people, and then that proximity and that knowledge can be sort of like shared. This information can be shared and the family still stays together on a very difficult topic. You know, this is a polarizing topic, but it can be done. I've seen it.
And masterfully, because you're a mom of 5. So we have 4 other children that we're trying to bring along too. How do you make sure everyone's voice is heard, everyone's seen, no one's lost, no one is centered more than the other? Help us with this balancing act. I'm taking notes, so talk slow.
Not so gracefully. I mean, you know, there was a lot of grace that happened during these last 10 years. This one was, you know, it's a stumbling block for me. 5 children, one at the time seemed in desperate need of my focus. So much so that it was life dependent. Pannell said, if I can't be, then I don't want to wake up tomorrow. If tomorrow my body's going to look like yours, Mama, I don't want tomorrow to come. So when you look at that sort of like not wanting to live, that was where most of my attention went. Now I've always been a hands-on mom. I do breakfast, I do lunch, I do dinner, I do homework, I take your kids to school, I'm tucking you in, but my slowness, my focus, my eyes, my touch landed more on Pannell for maybe 4 critical years. Finite. I'm not infinite. I got finite energy. You know, so that's the reality that is, you know, still hurts my heart that there were 3-4 years where not everyone got as much of me. And one kid said to me, all you know, Mama, is transgender. That's all you know. Ugh, that hurt. But the good thing is I'm not going anywhere. So, you know, then it was a year of science. My kid, I have a scientist who is, I said, look, let's take a day and do like science fairs. Let's geek out on manga. I try my best now to really insert myself in all of my children's lives. We are out of the woods with Pannell. He's stable. He's safe. The world is changing. I work with an organization called the Human Rights Campaign. I'm the chair of the foundation board, our largest LGBT group. I feel good about that. And now I'm spending years and months with, you know, spreading myself out as mothers do. There was a weakness in one area of the building of this family. I stabilized that, and now I'm here for a lot more ground to cover. And I have to tell my kids, I see you. I know Pannell's identity. What's your identity? Oh, you're a scientist. Oh, you're an athlete. Okay, let's geek out on that. Learning all the time, really trying to, it's not making up for lost time, but it's recognizing what I could not do at that time and going at it 200% the same way I went at Pannell 200%.
And the biggest piece I hear there is grace. You got to give yourself grace because mothering, and I was noticing because I geeked out on you, just FYI, and been watching your interviews, and you bring up this notion of what we call in the academy other mothering, but you've coined this genderless motherhood.
Yeah.
Can you speak more to that so our audience knows what you mean?
Yes. So I, as a mother of 5, I have been thinking about witnessing and actively mothering for decades. And a lot of that time was task mastering. My mothering was task mastering. Clothing, chopping the garlic, sauteing the food, getting people dressed, washing clothes, doing hair, homework, finding out the best friend's mother's name, moving people around. Task mastering has become a big part of how we grade mothering and understand mothering. And so I pulled away from that for a minute. I went through a divorce, and I was forced to separate from my children every other week. I was forced to pull away and untether. And I realized that mothering is not task mastering solely. In fact, the mothering that I'm focused on these years, mothering with the capital M, is beyond task mastering. That has to happen. But what I talk about when I talk about mothering, it is building up your child, building up your community, building up your family as an architect would design something. Understanding the foundation, the mud sill, like what stabilizes it, understanding all of the structural elements, the people, understanding the aesthetics, language. Language is an aesthetic, really. We can flower it and change it, but you cannot remove the people who are the structures, right? So I just been thinking about mothering as architecture and as building. And then I realized anyone can do that. It does not require a woman to be home cooking and organizing schedules. And it does not require you to be a woman. It does not require you to have biological offspring. Mothering is leadership. I've seen some of the best mothering from the queer community. I've seen Pannell mother his siblings. I've seen my daughter mother me in moments, with tenderness, with protection, with information. And so when I talk about mothering, I'm not talking about white women, because that's usually who gets the big title of mother, wealthy white women. I'm not talking about heteronormative, relationships where you have a husband and a wife raising little kids. I'm talking about anyone who is a leader and wants to take on these qualities of building up, unifying, fortifying against the odds, that person or that community that they're responsible for. We need more mothers. Raise your hand. You don't have to. It is not a biological or a gender requirement. It is taking ownership of the folks around you and using the principles that Black women have been very historically have used. I've learned these principles through Black women. I've also learned these principles through the queer community, but I'm positive that they can be shared by many.
There we go. I saw the post for questions, and we have one. But before I get to that question, when we spoke, and I told you I geeked out, I realized you're a Spelman grad, and you already invoked HBCUs.
Yeah.
With that being said, what are your thoughts on the HBCU community? And when the time comes, if Pannell wants to enroll, where do you see that coming together?
Oh, tough question. Love my Spelman. My dad was so smart. He said, baby girl, go anywhere in the world you want. Go to any university. I'm only paying for a Black college. You decide. So I ended up at Spelman, changed my life. Dr. Cole was the president at the time, and she taught us to be, Spelman was a white glove institution, and many women wanted to marry a Morehouse man. Dr. Cole came in and she said, we are women, we are ladies, we have etiquette, we also have intellect. We do want to marry and we want to revolt. She raised us as revolutionaries and she raised us as activists and family members. So that was a big thing for me to be at Spelman. Morehouse, of course, right across the street. My grandmother taught. She's a professor at Clark. Many of my family members have gone to HBCUs. I don't care where my kids go. I used to want my daughter to go to Spelman. I had this whole trajectory that I had seen for her, my daughter, Georgia. She ended up going to Oberlin for a year, and then she ended up moving to Switzerland to study German. And she landed there. She lives in Switzerland and is fluent in High German and is doing her thing as a social worker. I don't care what my kids learn. I do care that they engage. I do care that they learn something wherever their interest takes them. I do care that they put themselves in places that are healthy for them. And if they need to go in places that are slightly dangerous, that they have built themselves up internally so that they can go and pioneer and break ground elsewhere. But I don't care where they study. I've learned at this point, we can get information in lots of different places. Spelman and being in Black communities, I think, is essential for Black people. But what Spelman represented can happen at home. It can happen on the basketball court, really. It can happen at church. It can happen over dinner with your girlfriends. You have to have roots in your Black culture. You have to have roots in your LGBT queer culture. Find it. I don't know. That's up to you. That's on you. I tell my kids that.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to pull up. Okay, so we have one question from Sherry Dan. I think I know this lady.
Okay.
It says, how did Pannell feel about you writing a book about his life?
Ooh.
And how was having queer children transformed you?
So I was ready to write about it and talk about it and share it way before he was and before his father was. And so I didn't. I checked in with the family first. Well, I checked in with the core family, Pannell and Dad at the time. And it wasn't until they said, okay, I feel better, I feel comfortable, that I started sharing. I think the first time I shared a story about our family was with Essence magazine. I wrote a piece on what it was like to hear my child say, I'm not a girl, I'm a boy. And then Cosmopolitan magazine shot a little mini documentary on our family. They came into our house and filmed us for a day. I think I had 11 million views in the first couple of days. It was huge. Now New York uses that video for diversity training, the state of New York. So this has been an ongoing process that my children have witnessed me talking on stage in front of thousands of people, on television, on the news. And it makes Pannell proud. I check in all the time. How are you feeling, Pannell, when I talk about it? It's cool. I like it. And I see him smile. And I see him also proud when his friends come up to him and say, I saw you on television. I saw you on the news. Way to go. So I'm modeling. I'm doing several things when I'm writing books and when I'm speaking. One, I'm modeling to my children that who we are is prideful, and who we are is a gem, and to honor it and to, almost like show it is because we love ourselves, right? I'm also modeling to the outside world, get used to us. We are not going to be pushed back by the bills, by the laws. We're not staying home. We're going to be in the bathrooms. We're going to be on the sports teams. We're going to be all over town. So I'm modeling to the world that diversity is a practice, and you're going to have to see us. Pannell likes it. And when he tells me no more is when I will change up my approach. I won't stop fighting for LGBT rights or Black rights, but for example, when he went to his new school, he said, just don't come into my classroom and read the book. So I said, fair enough. He also said, I want my name to be Pannell, not Penelope. All good, fair enough. And I think also, this is an important part. Oftentimes I'm talking about not one person. It's not just Pannell. I'm talking about millions of people. And so if this visibility, which oftentimes is dangerous, it gets too much, there is the point is still there. There are millions of people that we don't see, millions of trans people that we choose not to see, millions of queer people that have been that we've denied. And if millions of people are living in oppressed life, in a hostile life, everyone's going to feel it. It's just the law of nature. And so there's so much to talk about that does not involve talking about my son or my children. It is a human obligation to address the bias and the violence against millions of humans. So Pannell likes it. I can shift whenever he doesn't and take the attention off of him. I have long-winded answers.
No, I'm taking it all in. It's needed. We gotta cover ground.
Yeah.
You know, you gotta meet folks where they at, and people are jumping on the bus as it comes around.
Yeah.
But it did bring me back to Pannell,
Mm-hmm.
and preparing to talk with you. I would get on the phone and talk about the book and ask folks, and the number one thing that came up was around the parenting piece. And at the time, Pannell was so young, and you know us, kids don't know nothing about nothing.
I know.
You already talked about how you humbled yourself, but when we come from this space where we're all knowing, it's like this banking model. We're just depositing into our children and they have nothing in return to give us. In the back of your mind, when you were making these life-changing decisions and not knowing the road that you were going on, but you also had that fear looming, can you talk about how you navigated that, wondering, is this truly what it is, and are we going to see it through its fruition?
First, I would say they weren't life-altering decisions. They were life-affirming decisions. I wasn't making any sort of changes. I mean, we're talking about a young person, so there aren't any bodily changes. There aren't any hormones or injections or medicines. We're talking about language. So I said he instead of she. Pannell wore blue jeans instead of dresses. Pannell was able to play with the boys on the boys' teams. So these were, and when I say life affirming, because Pannell said, if I can't, I don't want to wake up. So I'll say it's all complicated until your kid says no more life. Boom, you get it together. What does it take? Me to say he got it. I'll practice in front of the mirror. So life affirming, I like to say. I guess the idea that children don't know, I know where it comes from because experience gives you a lot of perspective. And I did not say yes on day one. So first, second, third year of Pannell's life, those 3 years were very difficult. And I thought, wow, why is this kid so different from my other children? Nightmares every night, reoccurring nightmares, the monster's coming to get me, mama, biting the nails until bloody. Refusal of touch. I couldn't change Penelope without the whole body being, as a young child, being so agitated. Screaming. I'm a mom of 5. Temper tantrums, I can get through that. This was different. Penelope was heavy and weighted and angry. And so when I talk about having spent months trying to fix it, I thought, love, maybe there's too many, I have so many kids, I'm so busy. Let me slow down with Penelope. Let me do all the things that a mom can do. And it only escalated, and Pannell was pulling away from me. So I wasn't thinking that Pannell had all the answers. But when I asked Pannell what's really wrong, why are you so angry? And he gave me a very definitive answer, because everyone thinks I'm a girl and I'm a boy. And then he said that over and over and over and over again. It wasn't a day or a year that he said, okay, never mind. It's too complicated. I'm really a girl. Never mind. I don't want to be. He's never not been persistent. So I think when our children are persistent, consistent, and demanding of something, And we're smart. We're not talking about demanding cookies. We're not talking about demanding crayons. I'm talking about identity. We know the difference. And for multiple months and years saying, I am, in the face of his father, the biggest man he knew, in the face of his classmates, the strongest social group he knew, in the face of a karate opponent, he never said, I give up. He said, I am a boy. And I'll tell you, it's scary because physically, I was nervous for him in those karate moments. He's competing against boys double his height. And he said, don't worry, Mom, I'm not scared. I may win, I may not, I'm not scared. I was nervous for him with his father. Can this kid really take his father grilling him? If you want to be called a boy, you got to stand up to me and tell me you're a boy. Fennell stood up and said, I'm a boy. So I don't have the scientific answer. I don't have maybe the most articulate, smartest sociological answer. But when our children consistently and persistently tell us something about their identity, about their being, we have to listen. Who am I to know what his happiness looks like? Just for me to hear it and then to make space for it, clear out the other stuff in the world so that this child who's told me what his happiness looks like can move through life in authenticity.
You need another book. Just know, like, the subtle correctedness, you mothered me in that moment, letting me know, not life altering, life affirming. And it's those little nuances that change the whole narrative. And it's like, no, I didn't even, but it's getting out that deficit thinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was amazing just to hear it, to see it, to be a part of it. But coming full circle and knowing that you can't choose what makes him happy.
Can't.
It's like, it's that simple, but it feels like it's so hard. So,
and these aren't like little happinesses. I mean, I'm a parent. My youngest is 11 now. During the pandemic, he became addicted to his video games. I took his video games, his phone, his iPad away, never to have, they haven't returned. It's a year into the pandemic, right? I also took away all his clothing, his sneakers, his Nikes, because he was rude. He didn't have his clothing for a month. I was like, figure it out. Wear some hand-me-downs. I'm not a soft mom that says yes to everything, but I have been criticized for letting my kids talk too much, express too much. And to me, look, nobody has the perfect balance of parenting, but what has worked for me is I'm tough with the things that I think are, not deeply important. Electronics. I don't give a F. I'll take it away for 7 months. But when you tell me what your name is and you tell me what your identity is, that's not to be played with. We've seen what stripping people's identities and names do to entire cultures. We've witnessed that in the Black community. So who am I going to now strip away my own child's identity and name that he wants? So I learned the lesson. I've watched history. Yeah.
And so making history, being a part of history, it was Born Ready. How do you want to see this tool used? Or do you see it as a tool? Or how do you?
I do. So interestingly enough, this organization that chair the foundation board for, it's called the Human Rights Campaign, and it's our largest LGBT organization globally. They have developed a lesson plan around Born Ready. So we have a program that goes into thousands of schools to teach diversity and language and affirmations of trans LGBTQAI plus kids. So we teach children, we teach students and teachers as well, how to shift. And so Born Ready has a lesson plan now that can be used and brought into the classroom, and it can help students not only learn about gender diversity, but just learn about talking and discussing topics that are foreign, right? So transgender is not the only foreign topic. There are lots of things. And I tell you, in probably in 10 years, it's going to be old news. Our kids are going to be like, you for stumbling over what? But so yes, Born Ready is a great book to bring into the classroom with a lesson plan. And I can share that with everyone. Feel free to reach out to me. The Human Rights Campaign is also a place you can go to on their website and find out about the lesson plans for the book. The program is called Welcoming Schools. It is a tool that I think not only can it be used, sort of like very structured in the classroom, but I think with families, because I show grandpa, siblings, dad, mom, pannell as the center, we all have different perspectives. We don't all agree. In fact, one brother says, you can't just become a boy, you have to be born a boy. And there's no solution to that. It's just the reality. We have different perspectives and still we are a family. So I think we can read this with our family, young and old, trans and cis, straight and queer, and really identify with the nuances, the complications, and feel okay with that. And I have to say, my family has not agreed on this. Like, people are listening to me. I'm sure there's like folks in the audience that might not agree with my approach. Neither do all of my children. Neither do my cousins and my aunties. So that has become a part of our understanding that families and communities, the goal is not to agree. The goal is to have decorum when discussing these big topics. And then the goal is to eat dinner together at the end of the night. So this book is a part of that. It'll help us see it is fine to be a family divided on these issues, or I don't mean divided, I mean a family with different opinions, different perspectives. And the goal is to eat dinner at the end of the night together. Yeah.
I had a question around HRC.
Yeah.
But
and I have to say, I'm speaking on stage with HRC at 1:15. So by 1:10, I got to hop off. 10 minutes.
Okay, so we got this, the last one, people.
Yeah.
So in invoking HRC and just in general, when you think about the LGBT community, lots of folks, it's trenched in whiteness, and that's the space for white folks. And as of recently, like within this past decade, HRC has been doing intentional work to reach into the Black community. But when you look at all the developmental models, the issue of race and the intersection of the Black community is missing. Mm-hmm. Are y'all trying to bridge those gaps?
Yeah. So HRC is an organization that lives in America. And it is up against the same issues, disease, sickness, obstacles, roadblocks that America has been up against. I will acknowledge that almost all of our institutions, HRC included, have been centering white people. HRC centered white gay men for the bulk of its existence. It's now over 40 years old. And that was apparent. I did not even know of HRC. Wasn't on my radar. I don't think most Black folks recognize HRC as the powerhouse that it is. We have multiple tens of millions of dollars that go towards electing pro-equality officials, even presidents. We helped push Biden's presidency. We also have 13 plus programs that go into HBCUs, Black men living in the South with AIDS, the religious communities. So we're doing a lot of work with a lot of money. But this is sort of like the undercurrent. What is mostly known about HRC and most of our major institutions is that they have centered white folks, white men in particular. That has to change. There has been a reckoning. COVID, Mr. Floyd, George Floyd, there's been a reckoning with white folks. And so this last 2 years ago, we hired our first Black president of HRC, a Black Liberian man, Alfonso David. I'm the first Black chair. And we're not quiet folks. And then we've got a lot of white folks on the board and on staff as well that want the shift. So our program, one of our strongest programs, is our Trans Initiative program. And one of our growing programs that has such good strength is our HBCU program. How do we stabilize the lives of our queer HBCU students. Like you asked me, if Penelope wants to go to an HBCU, would you let him? If it's safe. I don't even know, what does that look like for Penelope? I hope it looks like safe and educational, but not just on the strength that it's an HBCU. It has to be safe, life affirming, and educational. So there is a lot of work to be done in my organization, HRC, but in all of our organizations. It starts from leadership, but it also starts from collaboration. I have found folks in the organization, white folks, and I have developed relationships with them, and I have sent them my book. I have sat down with them at the dinner table, and this proximity to each other is really important. I don't have the answer to like, is this going to be perfect? I've never seen America perfect. Is there going to be change? I've always seen Black folks bring change, always. And I've always seen queer folks bring change. So I believe in HRC's growth. It has been growing for the past, it's not just this year, it's been growing for the past, decade, 5 years, towards in this direction of intersectionality. So I'm going to find the yes, is what I say. I'm going to find the yes.
I can get down with that slogan. And I just want to extend a thank you. Evisa's back on. If you haven't, make sure you get your book from Uncle Bobbie's, Born Ready, The True Story of a Boy Named Penelope.
And can I just say, I love working with, I just literally DM'd Uncle Bobbie's and said, I wrote this book. Can I do something fun with you guys? And you guys said, yes. I love the independent bookstores. I love bookstores in general. Thank you. Philly is where two of my sisters were raised. I've got a lot of relatives in Germantown. And so I just want to say, thanks for embracing me. Thanks for doing this for us. We love you.
Thank you both. This was an amazing and word of the day, life affirming conversation. I'm so glad that we got to do this and to really, really speak to this specific subject and to be reaching families and hopefully educators. I'm really glad to learn about this, that this is going to be a part of the curriculum and the lesson plan around the book.
Yeah.
Oh, so wonderful.
Oh, and I want to say, can I tell you one more thing?
Yes.
I've been working with 3 great women, Regina King, Natasha Leone, and Maya Rudolph, to develop a TV show that is based in Brooklyn, Black family, a boy named, 5 siblings, this basically my story on television. So when we talk about proximity and we talk about sharing the information and we talk about transferring information from a person to another person, maybe we'll do this on television as well. So thank you for being a part of this.
That's amazing. I'm so glad to hear that. I'm looking forward. Thanks everyone for turning up, for showing up and listening and participating. Turning up we will do later. And congratulations on this amazing book. I'm so happy for you and so proud for your family.
Thank you.
Thanks, Destiny. It was wonderful having you.
Destiny, you were just the best to talk to.
Oh,
thank
you. I appreciate it.
And your husband said you are awesome too, I think. Did your husband say that? He was like, she's the bomb.
Thank you.
Y'all be
Bye.
safe. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.